Today for morning time, I was unable to reach school as I woke up late again around 7:40 a.m. And the next best thing I did was eat food and go straight. And we tried to take the route this one time that heads directly back to the old school, but there are obviously a lot of people there, so we took that centuries-old route again to eventually reach the school finally. And this one goes all the way around, so it does take a little bit more time. But I did not go to school yesterday as I had to attend other things and I had missed quite a bit. But better than missing a whole week of school. But in the drive to school, I noticed more cloud cover against the local heat dome today. But I brought sunscreen just in case because of how hot today is. And of course, my mom's car is also as messy in the back, but there are old clothes and a window cover. But I was excited to go early today, though I did end up waking up late, so I was not able to do interaction in the morning. But like my last observation last year, the amount of people that coming to school early every 10 minutes grow sort of exponentially. So our goal is to always come early to school, just talk with random people. But heading down to period 3 Spanish. Today, the teacher announced a joke as we entered in class saying why the math notebook is sad, and it's because it has a lot of problems. But the class did not laugh, and for today, there was another irregular boletos verb quiz, and for irregular words such as hacer or conocer. And I finished quickly as it's only 8 questions, but mostly everybody was quiet and less disruptive. But sadly, today, Jude is not here. I noticed while class, the weather was even more humid, much like the Philippines, but in class it was cooler, and the teacher moved to the assignment sheet. And I did it, but I realized yesterday is a teacher's canvas and other worksheets she provided them, of which I thought were homework, so I did all of them, but surprisingly, half of it was today's work. So I'm already finished for this class nonetheless, but we did spend another 20 minutes working on it, but I got distracted listening to the music the teacher had. But the teacher asked questions about the answers, and my writing was messy, so I went for a shorter answer that used saber, but I noticed others had a struggle in pronouncing the U sound when it comes to the irregular verb of saber. It was kepo, not cuepo. But the next part that we also did were reflexives, and she went over us with that, but I relaxed then and did some Italian because I already did this thing, so I just did the Italian variants and kind of challenged myself for a little bit, but nonetheless, I moved my answers and did it. I did get caught off guard again for 12, and I confused it for 11, but I still answered in time nonetheless and finished it up. Last note for Spanish, I'll be adding the Italian variants later on, but moving down to English 3 later, the teacher said, catch up since you weren't here yesterday. And it turns out we were reading a short excerpt by Through the One-Way Mirror by Margaret Atwood, and the class had only stopped reading the second page, giving me enough time to ask the teacher to very quickly skim through the first starting pages for this quick excerpt. It's on a stapled piece of paper, unlike a book. And I was able to do this really quickly and also fill out the quick response this time that's ever done here. My race response was a little bit slapdash, but it was online on Canvas, and I was able to finish it on time, and this is our very first time that we have this thing. So the teacher said she's not going to hand down extensions for these because it only has to be until for the first 15 minutes. But I did notice for others, they also worked on other things too, such as note cards, gaming, and other work. And no paperwork for this class, thankfully, but she said a few things about how this type of culture that's described in the excerpt will affect us for years to come in the story's cultural highlighting. Highlights that we don't mind making a mess in our place, but when one does it to our place, now it's madness, highlighting hypocrisy. And in the story, it mentions sprawling Americans and excess things. And Dante, one of the students, said he lives in a mansion. As the teacher was explaining an example, she also joked for stereotypes. Canadians are the ones that have the most modest type of things, but when we are the Americans, we choose everything and everything extra. But anyways, though, the story does paint the tone as that Americans are messy. People are always watching us, and even the poorest in America are still richer than others in other countries too. And the teacher did also emphasize we also don't learn about other cultures as directly unless the U.S. had involvement in it, such as Vietnam or World War II, for example. So it's leaving us for our choice to learn about these countries ourselves. But it was pretty interesting, and I was able to actually finish this for most of the time. And it was also highlighted too is that the main part of this story was that most countries know about our system better than we do personally, because the power of the U.S. is a lot. So people want to know it in order to protect themselves. And so she highlighted the excerpt's hypocrisy and projected thinking versus reality. She said it in an eccentric tone, but it is very interesting superpower thing right here when one's own citizens don't even know about how some things are. But when we ask someone who isn't even American, they know about 90% more things than the current one that does. So, a little bit thing right there. I talked to teacher about it. She helped me emphasize some things, but I was able to nonetheless finish. And for that race response, I was able to finish that one. But nonetheless, I did talk to the teacher for a bit. I did realize I almost forgot my phone as I was leaving, so I went back. But the teacher did not leave, and I took it again. I talked with Rayan real quick as he said a few things as I was passing toward math period, but he nonetheless kept moving anyway, as he was also absent for 3 days. Math today is a one-team activity. No whiteboards because the teacher did order them, but he doesn't have them yet. So I wasn't here yesterday to learn about the inverse of operations and inverse of equations. So I was a little bit confused. So I just realized it's practically the opposite number and square in the x in my type of problem. And I still need assistance then because I was absent yesterday and the easier method of switching x and y. And we also learned about that, but it still didn't click in my brain just yet. So I might have to practice this for myself. The teacher continued instruction on this and using inverses. And as I was up on one of the boards, one of the girls in my table did help me try to understand what the inverse is. So I sort of get it when it comes to square root problems, but I think I do need a lot more assistance. But credit to her, guys. In this class, before I had to hurry this time. In period 3, mostly calm. The class was still less rowdy. Sitting down to fourth period, I had hurried to fourth period because I had to use the restroom really badly. I was duck walking, for example, until I weighed at the first stop. I was not taking a number 2, but I did have to take a number 1. So, because boys' restroom is always full. Heading down to period 4, science. Upon reaching the class, the teacher gave me the option, since I was absent yesterday, of watching the movie at lunch or renting it on Amazon to watch later. And it was the movie The Biggest Little Farm. This time, the class did watch about an hour of it yesterday, so I might have to catch up later. And sadly, we had also moved seats because the class is loud and I was a bit confused before being led to a new group table. The lights were off and, well, more people were quiet is, but I had summed up the courage to go up to the teacher and I realized that I had to write on a worksheet. So I had to transfer my answers, believing that we were writing on the other original worksheet from the lesson plan earlier on. I realized also in the movie, it's sort of dramatized too, but I get the real parts of it. I noticed when the coyote got killed as he was paralyzed because he was trying to chase a gopher beyond one of the fences and he snapped his neck. And then one of the guys actually shot him off camera, escaping to a scene in philosophy about the Milky Way. But the movie did change tone multiple times to try to implicitly teach that natural farming is difficult, nature is difficult, but it's still beneficial if you farm natural anyway. And I did not finish my worksheet in time, so I'm gonna have to do the sheet later. But I did talk to my table friends about it, and I did also find out that Alan, one of the main characters, also died from cancer. So bad realization. Have to watch the entire movie later though. Credit to that one guy and one girl that was also in my table. I did talk to him for a bit, but nonetheless, not too many mentions here. As for lunch period today, I would probably call this the worst outing because I had to move across places about quite a few times. The first place was a library, but it was closed currently for testing and hearing. So I had to move around finding older friend groups while in the heat, but they were not there. So once I reached the library, it was closed, so I didn't stick there for long. This time, I now stuck to Devin's group again, and this time, saddened to know that the library isn't open, so I moved with them to a spot near the student store. But there was a lot of traffic in there, so it was probably not worth it staying over there. So a lot of traffic locally nearby, so I talked to him really quickly, but eventually it was mostly missed. I left there and there wasn't enough time to start a new interaction with people, so I eventually had to part ways quickly and eventually head down to the cafeteria, of which was way cooler, but more people anyway, but I was not able to talk to anyone. But as in the cafeteria for my final living moments of that period, was that Samuel also came up to me and said, "You've been working on the reaction video since last December," which he keeps reminding me constantly. So do remind me again, Samuel, because I'll be taking care of that soon. But nonetheless, I'll speak about that later. Down to period 5, I was able to reach class on time and I was able to ask the teacher about what happened. And we just did notes and bell work yesterday. And I was able to very quickly catch up on yesterday's notes thanks to Jeremiah and also get a stamp for all of these later. So what I did is that as the teacher was doing the bell work second unit, I hurried and caught to the notes really quickly because this bell work was kind of copying a script first. So that took like an extra 5 minutes. I used that extra 5 minutes to copy down yesterday's notes and get things done as quickly as possible. Today's notes about the Declaration of Independence and specific antics such as self-evidence and rights, and a list of other hypothetical grievances and whether they'd affect colonists or the government. I again got stuck on the last question as it was another essential question about if Native Americans and other people got excluded from the Revolutionary War and the stigmas that they still have today. But nonetheless, as I was doing these notes, I was also writing down on my freestyle stuff too at that same time, and I was also working on those other notes from last yesterday that was regarding the American Revolution and the Declaration of Independence in terms of who signed it and what happened. It's about those notes. I finished those notes, and I got my 3 required stamps and barely got these turned in on time. For all 3 stamps, I'm lucky right there at that point, but very happy to get that done. But for most of the class, people were attentive. Some answered, some remained great, but most were adrift in a way to pass time. So the notes were mostly answering basic questions on a TED Ed video about 1776, but it was watered down, so not as hard as the work was as I had imagined it to be, but I'm glad I had caught up here. But moving down to period 6 art, today there are new phone CAT numbers, so I thought my art portfolio also got stolen for period 6 as I was scrolling through, but thankfully not. It was stuck with period 1, but someone did say that I shouldn't look for others because mine isn't mixed. I believe this was one of the freshmen, but I insisted, and I did find it in period 1 section. But for today, I continued on that Japanese woman drawing, now that I'm already done with the theme art. Most of the people there were freshmen, and I heard a few people talk about like family arguments and all, but as for my work, I did struggle on drawing the specific grid line because it's supposed to be 1.5 to 1.5. So the teacher did correct me a few times and say that mine was too short. So I still have to redraw that again. I was not able to redraw it today, so I'll have to redo it tomorrow, but I know we still have more than enough time, thankfully.